Have you ever wondered if you can beat Skyrim using only a Mammoth? Me neither. But let's find out anyway. Recently, I came across videos of content creators beating Skyrim the way Bethesda intended. Here, they used an officially licensed guidebook like some sort of f***ing nerd. So in this video, I will beat Skyrim the way Bethesda definitely didn't intend. These are the rules for this run. While there are some exceptions, the only damage I do must come directly from a Mammoth. His name is Kevin, and you are now emotionally invested in him. Lastly, we will be trying this on legendary difficulty because I hate myself and I'd give anything to feel again, even if it's pain. We start off by making a wood elf. For one, so that we can leverage their racial power, command animal. Another reason is that they make excellent twinks. Maybe God doesn't show himself because he too lives in fear of what he has created. Franklin. And just like that, Franklin was ready to start his grand adventure. Now let me preface this by saying that no one has ever done this challenge before. Likely because it's irredeemably idiotic. So I was uncertain on how to go about this and what obstacles I would face. All I knew is that I needed magic spells, and lots of them. So when it was time to pick where I wanted to spawn in, I picked the Mages Guild. Now let's play a little game. During this video, I will ask you to predict what will happen just before pivotal moments. Leave your answers down in the comments, and if you get them all right, you will win my eternal approval. Question 1. If you choose the Mages Guild as a starting location with the mod Live Another Life, what armor set will you receive? The correct answer is C. What's worse, you'll have skipped the part of the quest that awards you with the novice set, so we're off to a great start without magic robes. I had my first magic lesson, where I realized my teacher suffered from severe schizophrenia.
Unless you can control it, it can and will destroy you. Of course, my dear, of course.
He then invited the entire lecture hall to an excavation. I felt woefully unprepared, so I took a little detour to Helgen, where I made friends with the local blacksmith. I activated the Mage's Stone and took another little detour to Whiterun.
City's closed with the dragons about. Official business only.
I'll show y'all official business, alright. With some petty cash in hand, I went back to the college where I tried to scrounge up enough for some illusion and restoration spells. I came up short, so traveled to Solitude for some jobs. Wasn't the first time I sold my body for cash after being a new arrival in the big city, and it wouldn't be the last. To make even more money, I misplaced a few trinkets, odds and ends, that sort of thing. And even though I didn't know it yet, this was going to have dire consequences. After my little outing, I went back to the college and brushed up on spells until I felt ready for the excavation. On the way there, my thieving ways got up to me and I was confronted by Hitman. I was defenseless on my own, so this was Kevin's first chance to shine. But before we do all that, it's time for the next question. Question 2. What do you think is going to happen next? As it turns out, Kevin was tanky as hell. So to my pleasant surprise, it's answer C. Buffing him with illusion magic and keeping him healthy with healing spells made him indestructible. One downside is that when an enemy is close to dying, Kevin will tend to ignore this NPC in favor of another. But if that's the worst part, then we're in for a smooth ride. Unfortunately for Franklin, history would not see it that way. I entered Sarthal and immediately found out the reason why mammoths are only present in the outside world. They don't fit anywhere else. They are completely immobile, and for some reason, it pushes the game engine to its absolute limits. This led me to conclude that mammoths are unsuitable for inside use. Luckily, we can still rely on Tolfdir, one of the most powerful wizards in Skyrim. Despite all this, we had made it to the end of the dungeon, and Kevin was able to make short work of the boss. However, he and Tolfdir were beefing like crazy, and that's the end of our little pilot study. So, from the first quest, this is what we've learned so far. The worst part is that encounters take a long ass time, which left me with the question, how will I ever make this video entertaining while keeping the spirit of the run intact? I don't know. I spent some time gathering alchemy ingredients and doing the first quest of the Dark Brotherhood. The latter was quite simple. I then had to travel to Falkreath to collect my reward, but I did not have enough money for the carriage. So what happened next? Take some time to think about it and leave your answer in the comments. Who knows, maybe you'll win the grand epic prize of LSB. We were now ready to continue with the main quest. I climbed the mountain to reach Bleakfall's Barrow, which was swarming with bandits. Worse still, Kevin couldn't reach them on account of him being tummy thick. In response, I put Kevin on a keto diet to see if it made any difference. It didn't. I stowed Kevin away and did the old-fashioned route of just sneaking past everything. Because I chose to play as a twink, I was able to convince the rats to leave me alone. Kevin made short work of the giant spider, and the Draugr did the same to Arvel. Just a shame that I forgot to pick up the golden claw from his dying corpse. The Draugr at the end of the quest was no match for Kevin, and I took the Dragonstone with me back to Whiterun. So far, so good. Upon our return, it became clear that Whiterun was under a dragon attack, and we quickly went to Jarl Balgruuf for further instructions. Because of the commotion, he had no time for us, which freed up some space for me to work on my banjo skills. I then had the most rare occurrence in Skyrim I've ever had. The reward for this quest was actually something I could use. With our new weaponry in hand, we set off for the destroyed watchtower, where I immediately let Kevin into the fray. Kevin was more preoccupied with killing anything else that he forgot to focus on the dragon. So after a while, the only ones left standing were Irileth and the Mammoth. It took ages, so I just spent time waiting. And I calculated that it would take up to 2 hours to finish the fight this way. I then found myself questioning what I was doing. There's no way I could make this segment entertaining. Or so I thought. My next attempt, I kept Kevin at bay. This was a lot easier. The best way to do this encounter with a Mammoth is by only summoning him at the final stage. In the meantime, I picked up a few perks that made me more effective in illusion and restoration magic. After a small slump, we were back on top. We learned from our mistakes, so before heading to the Greybeards, I needed to make a few adjustments. I got the Agent of Mara buff for completing the questline where you have to help people in Skyrim find love.
Wait, you mean I should just tell her? Tell her how I feel?
Yas, King. After that, I tried to get Namira's ring, because I wouldn't be a real wood elf without cannibalism. Turns out, this quest is impossible within the restrictions of this run, because you actually have to do direct damage. Kevin couldn't fix this, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. During this quest, we did find novice robes of illusion, so that was pretty sick. I then activated the Aeternax stone. It kept me alive on several occasions. It was then time to train with the Greybeards. It was weird. They tasked Franklin with retrieving the horn of Jurgen Windcaller. To this end, the Greybeards had sent Franklin to Ustengraf, where he tried to avoid any unnecessary conflict by sneaking past the necromancers at the start. Then, Franklin was about to be found out. So now the question remains, what happens next? Young Dragonborn, if she says she is pregnant from your being, you shall make your best efforts to remain unseen. What am I doing with my life? Franklin snuck past and let the infighting take care of the rest. The newly acquired stealth perks were enough to remain undetected. Restoration magic was used to keep the Draugr at bay, and the spiders could be circumvented by convincing them we were homies. Franklin reached the inner location of the horn, but Delphine had already stolen it. We will remember this transgression for later. Before confronting Delphine, Franklin set off back to the Greybeards. They were so thankful that they collectively started screaming. This ruptured Franklin's eardrum. Ah, the screaming has ruptured my eardrum. Back at Delphine, she stated that she needed proof that Franklin was indeed the Dragonborn of Legends. Ready to confront their dragon enemy, they set off for Kynesgrove. When Kevin entered combat, he had to choose between attacking the dragon or Delphine. I had a proud papa moment when he chose the latter. Then, that made the fight take too long, so I scaled down Delphine's threat level. Now Kevin was able to put his focus on the dragon. The fight was over pretty soon after that. Not once did Kevin turn on Franklin. This never happened. Franklin now had the faith of Delphine with him, and they plotted to infiltrate the Talmer Embassy. But first, we needed to prepare. Morthal was chosen as a base of operations because no one in their right minds would ever go there. Upon visiting Morthal, we were ambushed by a dragon. For some reason, it was sea. Thanks, Todd. Anyway, before we could buy land in this hold, we had to help out with a little vampire problem. All of this was easy enough, until we had to face off against the master vampire himself. You see, vampires have access to a spell that does damage while also healing them. Since Kevin tended to ignore targets that were near death, he would always switch to a target that had more health. The majority of the encounter looked like this. I spent about an hour waiting for Kevin to get this shit done, and then I realized it wasn't happening. You cannot do this quest on Legendary with a Mammoth. 12 Mammoths is a different story though. It's working. With the vampire threat managed, we were allowed to buy property in Morthal. With it, I built a little shack, and the rest of the land was used to grow medicine of the highest quality. I spent some time unlocking the Words of Power for animal allegiance, so that we were not beholden to the racial perk that is only available once a day. Lastly, I needed an Amulet of Talos to decrease the time between shouts. The High Elf clothing store in Solitude sometimes have them in stock, but they might require some persuasion before actually selling it. With all of this done, I felt ready to infiltrate the Talmer Embassy and I met Delphine's inside man, Melbourne.
You're who she picked?
Yes. Franklin gave Melbourne only the essentials and he got into disguise. In order to get inside the actual embassy, you would need to cause a distraction.
As for honor, well, there are some luxuries even I can't afford.
Oh, if you play your cards right, mister, maybe you can afford me tonight.
Ellenwen! This servant girl has been throwing herself at me in a most disgusting manner.
During all of that commotion, Franklin was able to sneak away.
Don't you dare walk away from me, you slut!
He immediately blew his cover, but with a Mammoth, it was actually a lot easier. And that's how I infiltrated the Talmer Embassy without any problems. The next step was getting in touch with Ashburn, so Franklin traveled to Riften. Here, he tried out a new spell he learned at the college, which made people blurt out their hot takes without any filter. I actually really enjoyed the Horse Armor DLC in Oblivion. Unbeknownst to Franklin, this cat was actually a Talmer agent, so that couldn't have gone any better. After finding Ashburn, the unlikely duo escaped the sewers of Riften. Back in Riverwood, Ashburn instructed us to go to Alduin's Wall, which was heavily guarded by Forsworn. The shout he needed to learn was made by mortals, and thus incomprehensible for dragons. All Franklin had to do was uncover a secret document that allowed him to travel through time. Upon gaining a nice stash of undisclosed plans, it was time to find the Elder Scroll in Blackreach. Turns out, Blackreach is insanely easy if you have the shout become ethereal. With the Elder Scroll in hand, Franklin was able to peer through the annals of history, and he learned the words of power that were so vile, dragons couldn't even begin to hope to understand it. Skibbity toilet. I once did this entire fight with only a knife and a fork, so anything in comparison is a breath of fresh air. Even so, Kevin held his own pretty well against Alduin. It's just a shame that he and Parthenax were not getting along. After his defeat, Alduin fucks off to the Nordic afterlife, and we can only hope to follow him if we can tame a dragon. To this end, Franklin goes back to Whiterun to trap the dragon in the castle. The Jarl is against his idea, as the ongoing civil war prevents him from putting his castle in a vulnerable position. He'll only agree to this insane plan if there is a peace between the Imperials and the Stormcloaks, so Franklin sets off to Windhelm to negotiate a peace. What's up, all frick? Remember when you were racist to my entire kind and how you never returned any of my calls after I and consequences time? I'm motherfuckers. I think the Imperials should get Windhelm and the Stormcloaks get Elgin.
Bitch.
So, a ceasefire was in place. He then enslaved the dragon to fly to the Nordic afterlife. On the way there, he was too dumb for the puzzle blocking the way, so he just didn't do it. Nothing would stand between him and Sovngarde, except Soon, who only lets people through if they can prove their valor in combat. He was easily impressed. Then, it was time for the final battle. Once again, Kevin didn't play well with others, killing anyone but the dragon. At the last possible moment, it had seemed that this challenge was just beyond my reach. I had to try multiple times to reach this part. I then found out that Alduin has to die from a hit done by the Dragonborn. The actual last HP of damage has to come from a direct hit done by the Dragonborn. No amount of mammoths can change this outcome. So no, it's not possible to beat Skyrim on Legendary with only one mammoth. We got close though. What do you think, Kevin? We can also learn the expert alteration spell, Paralysis. You'll never guess what it does.